Alright fellas, we finally saw the first ever Zuffa Boxing card take place. Now, the controversy around Dana White's new league has been louder than any of the talk about the actual boxing. Every aspect of Zuffa has been pretty polarizing, and it's managed to truly upset the traditional boxing world. So today I want to talk about how their first show actually went, and more importantly, where they honestly go from here. Aside from all the rumors, what is the reality of Zuffa's place in the current boxing landscape? Now, when Zuffa was initially announced with this grand idea of taking over boxing, I expected a massive first event, something to make a statement. Yet instead, we got what felt like a prelim main card with just an underwhelming main event at the Apex. It all seemed rushed, with the details of who was even fighting only being announced a few weeks ago, and to nobody's surprise, the first boxer Dana White ever signed, Callum Walsh, was the main event. Now, this guy's been headlining UFC Fight Pass cards for years. He was essentially the trial run for what we're seeing now. Recently, we saw him pushed as the co-main for Crawford Canelo, so after such a big event and a big stage, it felt like a step backwards to hold his next fight at a 1,000-seat venue. It seemed like a mistake on Zuffa's part not to postpone this until they could hold it, say, at an arena in Ireland. But hey, let him fill the Apex instead. They've got to use it for something, right? Now, the promo for Fight Week really just piggybacked off UFC 324, and what we saw in terms of the weigh-ins and face-offs were just UFC Light. It was the exact same formula, just a different logo in the background. And as for the fights tonight, it was nothing fantastic. It was a prelim special put on a bigger stage, and the main event, Walsh vs Ocampo, was never going to be competitive. You might know Ocampo from getting sparked in the first round by both Spence and Zoo, and he was really just brought in as a vaguely recognizable name for Walsh to hopefully knock out and provide Zuffa's first KO highlight. Yet that highlight never came. Walsh won easily on points in an okay performance, but you wouldn't know that from watching the broadcast. Overall, the commentary team seemed to think they were watching the greatest card in the history of boxing. Every few minutes, a host or a commentator had to mention how brilliant the card was, or something like how perfect the judging is. The glaze was simply off the charts. Like, I get these guys want to keep their jobs, but they just need to calm it a bit. And probably the worst out of them all was Max Kellerman. This guy was once the best in the game, but now every take he has just makes me sigh. Overall, the broadcast quality itself was decent and had that UFC polished feel, but they could improve it instantly by having less biased commentators and not spamming ads literally between every single round. But the real problem, though, is that this promotion feels ashamed to be boxing. Dana has spent years rightfully criticizing how slow and bloated boxing can be, but his solution seems to be just stripping away the sport's soul. So far, it seems incredibly sterile. I don't think any boxing fan wants to see all the fighters in the same kit walking out into an empty warehouse. We like the personality and theatre of it, and if they lack that moving forwards, they're gonna struggle. So what could be the future for Zuffa? Well, there's been a lot of confusion lately. Initially, people thought Dana wanted to monopolise boxing and create a central league, but now this venture is partnered with the Saudis, who have their own Ring magazine cards. So then the theory was that Zuffa would be a feeder league for talent to graduate into the Ring events. Now, after signing Jai Opetaia, the question of what's the point of Zuffa only grows. And honestly, I don't think even Dana knows what the point is. I think signing Opetaia was made out to be a bigger deal than it actually is. And look, I'm Australian. I love Opetaia. He's a true champion, one of my personal favourite fighters, and a killer. But even back home, he's far from a household name. He hasn't become a star because he hasn't gotten the big unifications he's been chasing. And on top of that, the cruiserweight division is just kinda dead right now. And I honestly don't think Zuffa will radically change his path. It may bring him a bit more money and a US debut, but I don't think it brings the unifications he needs to become a star. He might get the guy who just beat an old Badou Jack, but he's not getting Zurdo Ramirez. Zurdo's with De La Hoya, and we all know that Oscar and Dana aren't exactly mates. Unless Opetaia moves to heavyweight, I don't think Opetaia is getting his big fights under Dana. It's also disappointing that his first fight in early March is scheduled for, you guessed it, the Apex. However, if the other major rumour that's making the rounds turns out to be true, I'll give Zuffa credit for that, and that is that Oleksandr Usyk might sign for Zuffa. Usyk wants Wilder, and they're shopping around to make that happen, and Zuffa's interested. If they land that, it's massive. No matter how washed Wilder might be, those are two legacy names that would do bigger numbers than really anything else on the table. But other than these sorts of big fights they're willing to bankroll, where they're probably going to struggle is the money. In the UFC, the brand is the star. In boxing, the fighter is the star. If Dana tries to import that UFC-style pay structure into Zuffa for most of the fighters, where the promotion takes the lion's share and the fighters are locked into long-term deals with little leverage, he's going to struggle to attract names as long as the other promotions still exist. He'll get some prospects and some veterans on the way out, but unless they're willing to pay the money, they're probably not going to get the big fights. So it will be interesting to see how they try to attract and build fighters in the future, but ultimately, at the moment, Zuffa is in a weird identity crisis. It's a promotion that wants the prestige of boxing, but the control of MMA, and in trying to find a middle ground, so far they've created something that feels a bit hollow. Yet, the second card they have lined up already looks miles better than this first one, and with names like Opetaia and the potential for Usyk, they clearly have the budget to make some noise. But for Zuffa, I think if they truly want to take over, they can't clone the UFC model completely. Boxing is at its best when it's loud, colourful, and a little bit unhinged. If they keep the fights at the apex and keep the glaze on the commentary at 100%, they're not gonna save boxing. But overall, Zuffa is here to stay. But whether they become the future of the sport or just a high-budget hobby for Dana White remains to be seen. Yet now, I want to hear what you think at home. Did you watch this card? And if so, what are your thoughts on tonight? I also want to know what you think is next for Zuffa. Will they take over boxing, or will they just be another competitor who is destined to end up like the rest? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. I love reading every single one of them. And if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Yet, thanks for watching, fellas, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.